Cash wasn't supposed to survive. That was the heartbreaking reality. He came into this world too soon, too small, too fragile, and worst of all, his own mother didn't want him. Lisa and her husband Jake had always loved animals, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened that morning. It started as just another routine walk on their farm, checking the fences, making sure everything was in place. They had lived on this land for years, but there were still areas they rarely explored. That day, for some reason, they decided to walk a little further, deeper into a part of the farm they hardly ever visited. And that's when they saw him. A tiny, helpless newborn donkey lay in the grass, struggling to move, still damp from birth. His mother stood nearby, but something was wrong. Instead of nuzzling him, instead of protecting him, she was acting aggressively. In one terrifying moment, she reared up and kicked at him. He tried to move, but his legs were too weak. She stomped, snorted, and turned away, rejecting him completely. Panic shot through Lisa's chest. She didn't stop to think. She ran. "Jake, help me!" she shouted, dropping to her knees beside the tiny foal. He was trembling, his breathing rapid, his legs too weak to support him. Jake was right behind her, quickly assessing the situation. Without hesitation, he reached down and cut the umbilical cord while Lisa cradled the baby in her arms. They didn't have time to figure out why the mother rejected him. They only knew one thing: if they didn't act fast, this baby wasn't going to make it. Lisa scooped him up, pressing his tiny body against her chest. He was so small, so impossibly light, he barely weighed more than a house cat. His little heart pounded against her hands, his breaths shaky and uncertain. "We have to get him inside," she said, already running toward the house. That first night, they didn't sleep, not even for a second. Every hour was a battle, keeping him warm, keeping him fed, keeping him alive. Lisa sat with him on the floor, stroking his head, whispering to him, begging him to hold on. She mixed bottles of milk, carefully feeding him, watching his little lips latch onto the bottle like his life depended on it, because it did. Jake sat beside them, quiet but determined. Every time the foal stirred, every time he made a noise, they both jumped. They had raised animals before, but never something this fragile. Never something that required this much constant attention. In those dark, early hours of the morning, Lisa looked at Jake and whispered the truth neither of them had dared to say out loud. "This is basically our child now," she said. "We have to keep him alive." Jake nodded. There was no argument, no hesitation. They were in this together. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Cash, because that was the name they gave him, began to find his strength. It happened in small moments. The first time he lifted his head without shaking. The first time he wobbled onto his feet and took a step. The first time his tiny tail flicked with curiosity instead of fear. And then, one day, something incredible happened. Lisa walked into the room and called his name. "Cash! Hey, Cash! Where are you?" For the first time, his ears twitched at the sound of his name. And then he ran to her, not stumbled, not wobbled, ran. It was like something had clicked in his little mind. He understood. This was home. These were his people. He was safe. From that moment on, he was unstoppable. Cash ran through the house like a little racehorse, his tiny hooves clattering against the floor as he zoomed from room to room. He played with the dogs, kicked his legs in excitement, and chased after Lisa and Jake as if he was a puppy, not a donkey. He became the heartbeat of the home, energetic, mischievous, full of life. He had an attitude, too. If another animal was nearby, he'd trot up next to them, do a little kick, and glance over as if to say, "Did you see that? Pretty impressive, huh?" But the thing about Cash was that no matter what he was doing, no matter how much fun he was having, he always made sure he knew exactly where Lisa and Jake were. He wanted to be near them, needed to be near them. If they were out of sight for even a second, he would call for them, his little voice ringing through the house until he got a response. At night, he followed them to their bedroom. He got his bottle, just like a baby. And once the lights went out, he walked over to Jake's side of the bed and laid down. That was his spot. He slept there, safe and warm, sleeping through the night like he had never known anything but love. Lisa often wondered if he remembered those first moments, if he knew how close he had come to not making it. But maybe, just maybe, that's what made him love so fiercely. As he grew, they introduced him to his mother again, through the fence. He didn't hold a grudge. He still loved her. He nuzzled against her, happy just to be near her. It was a lesson in forgiveness that Lisa and Jake would never forget. Cash was never supposed to survive, but he did. And watching him run through their home, happy, healthy, and full of joy, was one of the greatest gifts life had ever given them. For anyone who has ever thought about helping an animal in need, Cash is proof of just how much a second chance can change a life. Not just for the animal, but for the people who take them in. There are thousands of animals out there, waiting in shelters, waiting in rescues, waiting on farms, hoping someone will see them, hoping someone will give them a chance. Maybe that someone is you. Because sometimes, love shows up in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes it has 4 tiny hooves, a mischievous smile, and the heart of a racehorse trapped in the body of a little donkey who refused to give up.